All right, it's 6:05. I think we'll get going here. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their evening to attend the informational meeting here. Um, we have about 30 slides tonight to get through, and I'll ask that you hold any questions until the slides are over, and then we'll open it up for questions, whether they're voice or through the chat box. We'll take them either way. I guess we'll start with introductions on our end. My name is Dustin Lind. I'm the engineering supervisor. With me tonight is Stephen Toso. He's an engineering aide 4, and we have Carl Gillis. He's a DCAD technician. We all work underneath DCAD, or the Department of Community Assets and Development umbrella. That kind of encompasses engineering, public works, community development, and kind of the building side or building inspections. So with that, I think I'll share my screen here. Like I said, I have about 30 slides to get through, and then we will open it up for questions. It's the S10. Yeah. All right, so we're all here for the 24-1 2024 Street Rehabilitation Project informational meeting. Tonight is February 8th, 2024. I'll start with a little background to the street system here in New Brighton and some recent updates to that. In 1980, City Council adopted a comprehensive street plan for maintaining our streets and alley system. New Brighton has about 64 miles of streets and alley in total. The streets are rehabilitated about every 25 to 30 years. Kind of breaking that down, we try to rehabilitate about 2.1 miles per year. And we also try to rehabilitate them on a neighborhood basis, just to minimize disruption to the residents. More recently, on January 9th, 2024, the City Council approved a Living Streets Plan. The vision of that plan is to improve the quality of life in New Brighton through infrastructure improvements, being designing streets to include safe and comfortable routes for pedestrians and bicyclists. That also moves vehicles slowly and efficiently. We also look to create a sense of place that celebrates the feeling of community in the city and protect and enhance the urban forest and environment. So focusing on the project for this year, there are 2.54 miles of streets in the project corridor. The streets were last rehabilitated between the years of 1992 to 1993. There were a few streets that did receive mill and overlays. Those are 19th Avenue Southwest in 2002, Oakwood Drive in 2011, and 3rd Street Southwest in 2004. The streets that were mill and overlaid, we typically expect about 10 to 15 years performance from that mill and overlay. And looking at those dates, we're certainly pushing up against that right now. Street improvements. So on the surface and at a first glance, what we're proposing for the surfacing is remove the existing bituminous surface, remove the existing aggregate base material, installation of new aggregate base section, and then installation of a new 5-inch bituminous surface. That will give us a 9-ton road, which is a little bit more beefier than what's out there now, and we expect it to last at least another 30 years. The last piece to that would be to saw and seal expansion joints in the new surface to kind of control that seasonal cracking that happens, those freeze and thaw cycles. Street improvements, living streets implementation. So right now I'd like to kind of talk about and go over how we're going to tie the newly adopted Living Streets Plan into this project. This would be the first year that we're looking to implement that. So to kind of help us through that, we created a checklist to use on each street and kind of analyze what's going on with that street. And what we're really looking at is street category. Are the streets local, minor collectors, or do they carry a lot more traffic like major collectors? We also looked at potential needed features and action items, those being sidewalks, proximity and connectivity to parks, schools, trail networks, etc. Bike facility needs, whether those are painted lanes or protected. Parking needs, tree canopy improvements and additional boulevard trees, storm sewer and drainage improvements, placemaking opportunities, public transit adjustments, and crosswalk safe routes to school. With all that said, utility improvements and impacts also are considered during the review, because if we have a large scale utility improvement that impacts a lot of curb and gutter, that's the time that we would like to make some of these changes and be more inclusive with the Living Streets plan. So after reviewing the checklists and all the streets, we did find some needed features that are certainly needed in this area. One being a street width reduction to promote safer streets. Two being sidewalk connectivity to Silver Oaks Park and Hanson Park. Potential for additional boulevard tree plantings also came up, and storm sewer improvements to reduce localized flooding. The first thing, kind of sticking with the Living Streets plan, is to kind of go over what we're looking at for the street width reduction. There's a map here on the screen. There's a lot going on there, a lot of colors. I'll kind of walk through it here. So the green streets right now, we're proposing to reduce the width from their current width of 30 feet to 27 feet. So overall, that would be a 3-foot reduction in the street width. The blue streets, we're looking at a street width reduction of 6 feet, so going from their 30-foot current condition down to 24 feet. And the red streets, we're proposing no changes to the roadway width at this time, primarily due to there's no major utility work taking place on those streets, so the curb lines will largely stay intact on those streets. This slide kind of goes over the proposed sidewalk installation that was outlined in the Living Streets checklist. This proposed sidewalk locations are shown with the black dashed line. Those are on the west side of Oakwood Drive from County Road E to Silver Lane, on the north side of 2nd Street Northwest, on the east side of 9th Ave, and then on the north side of 3rd Street Northwest. And then on the north side of 4th Street Northwest is all. I'll kind of cycle back and forth here so you can kind of see where we are proposing them. And then just to dive into a little bit more what those sidewalks will look like. The sidewalks are proposed, as you would have noticed, on the 24-foot wide streets. So we'll be shrinking the streets down a little bit more to accommodate that sidewalk and boulevard. We're looking at a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk and a 5-foot wide grass boulevard. Kind of the key piece is the outside edge of the sidewalk will extend roughly 3.5 feet from the existing back of curb location. So we're not taking the 5-foot boulevard and a 5-foot sidewalk and putting it 10 feet up into someone's front yard. With the reduction of the street width, we'll actually be pulling it in a little bit from that. Kind of shifting gears a little bit, we'll look at utility improvements. I'll start with the water system improvements. The water main and water services in a portion of this project have a high break history, and they will be replaced. That's shown on these maps to the left, with the kind of red and yellow highlighted areas being the services, and the mains having a little bit of a red highlight. So the water main work will take place on 20th Avenue Southwest, Haynes Avenue, Sky High Drive, 19th Avenue Southwest, Oakwood Drive from County Road E to 3rd Street, 17th Avenue Southwest, a little bit of Second Street, 9th Ave, and Third Street Northwest. In total, there's 9,000 feet of water main that's going to be removed and replaced. 140 service lines, and we'll replace the service lines from the water main to the curb stop. 38 water main valves and 18 fire hydrants. Water services with a history of freezing will also be insulated during this process. And it's also important to note that while we're doing this water main removal and replacement, those houses affected will have to be put on a temporary water system. Essentially is a plastic pipe ran in the boulevard, and then houses are fed via drinking water garden hoses to their spigots and fed that way. Sanitary sewer system improvements. The sewer mains were televised. There are no issues found requiring open cutting of the street from televising. What we're really looking for is pictured there to the left with a lot of root intrusion or kind of these offset joints or cracks or breaks. We did find 2 manholes which are constructed of block. Those will be removed and replaced with more modern precast concrete structures. The block built ones have a tendency to leak, causing I&I in our sewer system. There is a relocation of approximately 700 feet of sewer main along 4th Street Northwest due to some large storm sewer installation. And all the manholes located in the street will be flex sealed to prevent kind of these dips you see that we all hit the rim rockers driving down the road. Storm sewer system improvements. When we look at shrinking the roads, the curb lines obviously go with it, and so do the drains that are located in the curb lines. So a majority of the catch basins will be relocated back into the curb line. Most notably, the biggest storm sewer improvement is going to be the installation of a 42-inch storm sewer line along 4th Street Northwest. This is being installed to mitigate some local flooding issues, actually east of Old Highway 8, kind of in the industrial area. The blue line on that screen is an existing 42-inch storm sewer system. And then we actually installed, ahead of this project, a secondary 42-inch line here through Hanson Park when they were working on that project this summer. So essentially we'll be connecting from Old Highway 8 down to what was constructed this past summer. We're going to look at drainage improvements at the low point on Oakwood Drive. That's adjacent to Silver Oaks Park. Historically, there's been some flooding in that location. And then Rice Creek Watershed District treatment may be required. We are in contact with them, trying to work through that process if required. You're likely going to see installation of some rain gardens behind the curb as pictured in that picture on the bottom there. Project funding. So for the street reconstruction portion of the work, that being only the new asphalt surface and the aggregate base material, 75% of those costs are paid for by the city. The remaining 25% are considered accessible and they're resident paid costs. You'll notice that the sidewalk construction is all paid for by the city and not assessed to residents, and as are all the utility improvements. So the water system improvements, storm sewer, and sanitary sewer system improvements are all covered by the city. That also includes curb and gutter. Those costs are considered part of a stormwater conveyance system, so those fall underneath storm sewer improvements and will be paid for by the city. So assessment breakdown. The estimated assessment rate for this project is $3,450 per lot or equivalent lots. That's historically been the most common and equitable way when largely all the lots in the project are the same size, same use, and receive the same benefit from the project as a whole. There's a few anomalies to that, and there's a lot going on here, so I'll just kind of break this down. and go over what each and every one of these colors are and what it means for residents. So I'll start with the single family lots. Those are pictured in yellow. As I mentioned, they're on a per lot basis, meaning each lot's going to receive the same assessment amount, which is estimated at $3,450 for each lot, regardless of street frontage. And I'll note that corner lots will receive only one assessment charge, same as every other property that's a single family, because New Brighton's policy is to assess on the short side of the lot, meaning you won't be assessed on both sides of your property if you are a corner lot. There are a few multifamily or duplex properties located on 20th Avenue. We are proposing assessing them at the same 3450, but per address, based on the higher density, and there are multiple units on that property. So they'll receive an assessment rate of 3,450 per address. So times two, there's two addresses, duplexes on those properties. And the last piece, I kind of call non-standard lots. So those are properties that have frontage on one of the street rehabilitation streets, but are part of a much larger parcel. So those you're looking at like a Silver Oaks Park, Oak Grove Mobile Home Park, kind of the Mirage area, this White Oak Court, the Heritage Oaks Townhome community is a little bit of an anomaly, and then there's one lot that's already been split but is recorded as one right now. So to handle that, we're looking at an equivalent lot basis, meaning we're going to take the front footage that abuts the street and divide that by the city standard lot width, which is 75 feet. That will give us an equivalent amount of residential lots that in theory could be on that frontage. And then we'll multiply that amount by the 3,450 per lot basis. So that assessment amount will obviously vary for each one of these properties. If there's any residents on here, business owners, feel free to let us know and we can talk more about what your specific situation is in more detail. Assessment breakdown. So payments available in two ways. The payment in full is accepted for 30 days following the assessment hearing, and that's underlined that the assessment hearing will not be held until September of next year, so September of 2025. We like to do that the year following just to make sure all of our project costs are in line and we're not missing anything. If payment is not received in full within that 30-day window, the payment amount will be certified to Ramsey County for collection with taxes over a 10-year period. So that'll be spread out evenly over a 10-year period. That does include interest charges. And I'll note that it can be paid off at any time during that 10-year period without penalty. That chart there to the left kind of shows a payment breakout over that 10-year period. This will be more looking at the single family amount of 3,450 with that 3% interest over 10 years. The principal remains the same and the interest starts to depreciate. Breaking that out over that 10 years, the average annual payment equates to $404.62. And breaking that out a little further, it equates to $33.72 on average a month. The last piece to this, there is a senior deferral option. In this case, they have to meet certain criteria. Those would be the homeowner has to be 65 years of age or older. The property has to be homesteaded, and the annual assessment amount has to exceed 1% of their adjusted gross income. In each case, applications can be filled out and submitted to the city. If it's approved by council, essentially the assessment amount will be deferred until sale of the house or death of the owner. So with all that work that we kind of just looked at, I talked to Excel here a couple weeks ago, and they plan on continuing their private utility installation. So Excel Gas, they were out there this past summer working on County Road E and Oakwood. They didn't quite finish what they wanted to, so they're proposing coming back. They're thinking April to May they'll be in there working to replace their gas mains, hopefully in front of our project. Project schedule, just a quick snapshot at where we're at and where we want to be with the project schedule. The neighborhood informational meeting is kind of the first step into the project. After this informational meeting, we will hold a public improvement hearing. And that's essentially where we bring a feasibility study to city council and run through everything in the project, what's going to take place, what the actual proposed assessment rates are going to be, and the cost of the city. We're looking to hold that in March. We're looking to award a contract sometime in April, maybe early May, and then start construction sometime ideally early summer of this year. Project completion, I have a fall 2024 / summer 2025 completion date. And that's really going to be based upon who the contractor is and how many crews they can allocate to this project. There's a lot of utility work and a lot of mileage of streets and sidewalk and curb and gutter. So it's a little bit of an unknown if contractors can bite off this size of a project, complete it in 1 year, but we hope that they can. And then kind of looking at the assessment hearing, like I mentioned, in September of 2025. Just a few notes to run through that were included on the previous slide. Access to property, residents will have access to their driveways during construction, except when major construction activity is happening adjacent to their property. I will note that water main installation is quite disruptive, and during that time when they're installing water main on your block, if you're on one of those blocks, it's not going to be fun. The water main's about 8 feet deep, and they're digging down the middle of the road, and it's going to be a little bit challenging during that time. We'll have staff on site every day to kind of coordinate with residents and coordinate access. So we'll just keep in touch and do our best to limit disruptions for everybody. On-street parking, we ask that no one park on the street while construction is underway, unless it's necessary due to curb and gutter installation. When you put that down, it has to cure for about a week. So during that time, people can certainly park on the street. Garbage and recycling. This is always a bit of a challenge with this size of a project and all the utility work. We work with the garbage companies and we'll continue service as normal. It is helpful to label garbage cans with your address. If we are working on a certain block during 1 week at a time, it's likely that the contractor or city staff will have to physically drag garbage cans to a different portion of a block that's unaffected, just so the garbage trucks can physically get to them, and then they'll bring them back after that day. Mail service, kind of similar to garbage and recycling. We'll work with the post office. With this amount of work, it's anticipated that temporary mailbox clusters will be needed, and we'll work with the post office and have those installed. Usually at the end of blocks, there'll be a big bank of mailboxes where the mail carrier can drop off all the mail. And weekly construction updates, weekly email construction updates will be provided. Further notice will be provided to residents on how to sign up for those with future mailings. And lastly, for my portion, I have a little bit of a plug here for Silver Oaks Park. It's in the area, and it was brought to my attention earlier this week that they are also having an informational meeting tonight at the same time. So I told them I would grab a few slides from them and just kind of go over what they're talking about at that meeting. The schematic there kind of shows the latest and greatest proposed plan. They're looking at expanding the parking lot to the north. On the east side of the park there. The existing tennis court is going to remain in place. There'll be some playground improvements, a new picnic shelter with a little grilling area. a new trail network through the park, and then some ball field improvements, which include player benches, fencing, and a new backstop. Right now, I'll turn it over to Steven Toso here. He'll be your kind of main point of contact in the field. He'll be out there every day, coordinating with residents and contractors and making sure they're doing what they should out there. But he'll just run through some pictures here on truly what to expect with all the utility work and street work that we kind of went over.
Yeah, like Dustin said, I'll be out with the contractors every single day, driving the streets, making sure everything's uh, going per plan. And I drive a white city vehicle. It's an F-150 with a big light bar on it. If you see me, just flag me down and we can talk about what's going on that day or whatever. But I'll be on site pretty much every day. So I'm your first contact. So call or email me if you have any questions or concerns that need attention right away. And just going through the project schedule, this is what you'll see first. The contractor will bring out a large either reclamation vehicle or a milling machine and strip the asphalt surface from the street. And they try to only do this on areas where they'll be working. So we try to keep the asphalt in place so you can get in and out. We don't want to rip it up and have it turn to mud too quick. So this will be the first step in the process. And after that, we get to most of the utilities. The first thing you'll see, you see that little blue and yellow 2-inch PVC running along the boulevard. On streets that are getting new water main, we will set up temporary water, which is those little blue pipes. We will super chlorinate that and test it and make sure it's drinkable. And then we will hook up each house with a garden hose to the spigot on either the front or the back of the house and backfeed your house so you will have drinking water throughout the process. That image on the left, that's kind of your typical water main pipe, just a 6-inch ductile iron pipe, significantly stronger than the cast iron pipe that's currently in place. Has a lot more flex to it. It can withstand the frost that we get in the spring and the winter. And then kind of in the middle there, that's kind of what a new fire hydrant looks like. We always replace those with these big projects.
I will kind of add to that, and one bonus on the side of being supplied with temporary water is it's being backfed through your house. So it's not going through your meter. So essentially you'll get free water throughout that duration.
And what you're seeing here are storm sewer improvements. That image on the right, that's some deep excavation there. You can see how small those guys look in the hole. That's kind of what all of 4th Street is going to look like for several weeks. It's a 42-inch pipe going down that street. It's going to be long, slow digging. And then the one on the left, that's kind of more your typical storm sewer structure. Just a little 2x3, and the storm sewer stuff goes pretty quick and they can go through that relatively quick. And then, yeah, we do a significant amount of curb removal on this process. Every street that's getting new water main, we'll be getting new curb on each sides. Every street where we're shrinking, we'll get new curb on each side. And we're on the north side of the project, so 2nd Street, 3rd Street Northwest, 4th Street, that already has B618 curb. The curbing on the south end of the project by Oakwood Drive, that's what you call surmountable curb. So it's a drive over curb that will be transitioning to B618 curb, which you kind of see on the right side here. So it's a barrier curb, kind of protects the pedestrians on the sidewalk a little bit better. And then we will be installing curb cuts in front of every driveway. And when you see this equipment, this is when you know things are coming to an end. The one on the left is a road grader. So we put a 2% crown on every street, and that grade operator can set that big blade to whatever percentage we need and go from the curb line up to the crown and start putting the street back together and getting ready for pavement. And in New Brighton and on these streets, pretty much everywhere, we do 2 lifts of asphalt. The first lift of asphalt is typically 3 inches. We lower all the iron, so all the manholes in the street, and then we pave right over them. And then we come back later and saw cut through this first layer of asphalt, raise up those structures and the iron and the castings 2 inches above the surface to get ready for the next lift of asphalt. And this is when things are going well. We get the final lift of asphalt and everything's put back together. We're starting to restore the project. And yeah, this is our second lift, typically 2 inches. It's a little bit different mix, so it looks nice and smooth on the end. And this is something we've been doing for 15, maybe 20 years. These are pre-designed stress fractures, kind of like what you see on a concrete driveway or sidewalk. The road surface, I'm sure as everyone in this climate has noticed, it heaves and thaws and shrinks and expands. And we put in these cracks so it ideally cracks along this joint and it's easier to maintain, it looks better, and we don't have jagged cracks that are harder to maintain in the future.
I can take this one. So I think this is our last slide here, to kind of wrap things up and just kind of run over some information, that's helpful for us when we put together the plans, and present the feasibility study to council. We're looking for, location of sprinkler systems, invisible dog fences, things we can't see just from driving around or surveying the area. If you have plans for driveway, or private utility repairs, please let us know. It may not be a good idea to replace your driveway, noting it could get muddy, the streets are gonna get dug up. The last thing we want is to get a nice new concrete, pretty white driveway and then drive on it with muddy tires for the summer. If you've ever had a frozen water service, please let us know. We keep track of that, but in case something's missed, please let us know. Dates of special events, family gatherings. This is gonna take place in the summer, so graduations, anniversaries, anytime you're expecting kind of a large crowd, let us know and we'll do our best to kind of work around those events. Any drainage issues, if you're aware of any ponding or any flooding that we certainly haven't covered, please let us know. And then kind of more importantly, the special accessibility needs, we'll coordinate just like with any of the gatherings. If there's anybody that either uses Metro Mobility or needs some special access, we'll certainly work with them on getting in and out every day and when they need it. So I'll leave this up here. If you want to jot some information down quick, for contact purposes. I think what I'll do is I'll leave this up here. And we'll start looking at the chat box. And if I can unmute or you can go off mute, certainly do so, and then we can start fielding some questions, from here on out. Thank you.
Is everybody unmuted? Can you unmute them? If Nick is on there, maybe Nick can unmute everybody.
Hey, we do have to unmute everybody individually, so if anybody does have a comment or question, if you could do the raise your hand option, and then we can unmute people as they raise their hand.
Thank you, Nick.
Excuse me. Hi, can I ask my question?
You certainly can. Hi, Sue.
Hi. So I live in the Heritage Oaks Association right off of Third Terrace there
Mm-hmm.
in White Oak. So I'm a little confused about the assessment because we would fall into that non-standard, when you showed that slide.
Yep. I'll back up here to kind of look at it.
Yeah, and um and then once the slide's up, I can explain better why I'm confused. Okay. So
So I
I'm
think
in the purple area for those of you, on the video call. So it's a non-standard lot. So will people in the association pay different amounts based on this formula you have in there?
Yep. So I'll kind of run through that there. That is a little bit of anomaly even from the other non-standard lots. So what we're proposing there is taking the front footage, what adjoins Third Terrace there. You'll notice the blue line kind of right here. If you see my mouse,
Yep, I
uh,
see
is,
it.
is the frontage. You guys were given a corner credit, similar to kind of the corner single family houses. So that's knocked off the footage. And what we're proposing is taking that, look at my sheet here, 233 feet. Dividing that by 75 brings you to 3.11 equivalent lots. That number will be divided out amongst the 29 properties within Heritage Oaks. So we recognize that, yes, there is frontage, and you do use Third Terrace. It does benefit to get in and out of the townhome association. But you also have HOA dues inside there too. So that's why we decided to kind of split that amongst all those 29 properties within.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, somebody might pay 3,450. Somebody might pay, I'm gonna just make it up, 2,900.
Nope, they'll be split out equally. So
Oh, okay, so we'll all pay the same.
correct, within Heritage Oaks. Yeah.
Okay, okay, and we don't know what it's gonna be. Everything is an estimate.
At this point, yeah, the project will go to council at that public improvement hearing with a formal feasibility study.
Okay,
At that point, it'll be ordered if it is, and then we'll have a little bit more of an idea of the exact amount. And notices will be sent out to everyone involved in this project who can attend that public informational meeting with another number on there. So.
okay, and the hearing is gonna be held in 2025. No, the
Yep,
hearing
so
is
there'll
in
be
2024, but we pay in 2025.
correct. Yep. So there'll be a couple different public improvement hearings. The first one
Okay,
is kind of the public improvement hearing actually is kind of on the onset of the project and council physically orders the project. The assessment hearing is held prior to us physically adopting the assessment. So that's the one that takes place next year.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've unmuted, the name is Phil Sterner, or asked them to unmute. Phil, if you could unmute your microphone, you can go ahead and speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, my question was on the sidewalk. You have the sidewalk on one side of the street, and I'm concerned with Oakwood Drive. Did you consider like putting it on the other side where the park is and the townhome association? is on that side, since they're already doing improvements and you got the park setting already. Seems like a lot of homes have, had things done on their yards, and they do a lot of good upkeep on their yards, or they mow it up, a lot of pride there. And I know with the street shrinking, it's gonna minimize that, but on the other hand, it just seems like you have open parkland and townhome association land on the other side of the street. So just wondering about comment on that.
Okay, thanks, Phil. You're talking about Oakwood Drive, so the sidewalk is proposed on the west side,
Yes, correct, yep.
kind of coming down the hill. We proposed it on the west side for connectivity to the park. The last thing we want to do is put a sidewalk potentially on the east side. Now you're creating mid-block crossings or people crossing Oakwood to get to the park, which could be a little bit of a safety concern. So there was some thought into that, which is why it went on the west side.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
And now it's Lori A. Zubri. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Asked you to unmute. You can unmute your microphone and go ahead and speak. Second call for Lori A. Zerby. Oh, sorry, Zerby or Zerbe. If you want to unmute your microphone, you should be able to. And go ahead and ask your comment. All right, not hearing Lori at this time. We're going to move down to Barb Gabatino. I'm going to ask you to unmute. You can go ahead and speak whenever you're.
Okay, ready to go?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, questions regarding 3rd Street Southwest. I couldn't tell from your slide if 3rd Street Southwest is due for the water main work or not.
Oh, thanks. Yep. 3rd Street Southwest, according to our break history, hasn't had too many water main breaks. So the large water main replacement won't take place on 3rd Street Southwest, which is also why you're seeing the existing curb lines to remain and the street width to stay at 30 feet, because we're just not going to be in there tearing everything up utility wise.
Okay, and then just another quick one. You asked in the last slide for some information from residents, about different situations we might be in. Who should we contact with that kind of information?
Any one of the folks on that last slide, I can kind of, let me page back down.
Yeah, okay, I've got that.
Okay. We're
Okay.
also on the website too. If you go under the Department of Community Assets and Development, we're here at City Hall every day too. So feel free to stop in.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks much.
Thank you.
All right, I've asked, it's just the first name of Michael. Michael, you can unmute whenever you're ready and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question about 12th Avenue Northwest and about the possibility of who we would bring it up to get a speed table on the street to help accommodate some of the speeds with a lot of people that go to the park, especially with the renovations in the park. A lot more people are traveling there. And now that parking lot's kind of consolidated, there's a lot of traffic that moves down our street at a high rate of speed.
Well, we could certainly look at that. Typically speed bumps, if that's what you're talking about, or speed tables or something that we wouldn't install, only for snow plowing purposes and potential emergency vehicle access. It slows them down. Our snow plows have a hard time with those. They'll get ripped up. But we can certainly, I jotted that location down, and we can start taking some speed studies and kind of look at it as a whole and see what we can do. for traffic calming measures. You know, if that 12th Avenue piece would have been included in some utility work, certainly we would have looked at shrinking that one up as well. And by shrinking the streets, it naturally encourages people to drive slower because it feels more tight. But it just was not ready at this time.
Michael, did you have any other questions? I'll take that as a no, and we're going to try Lori and I believe it was George. George and Lori, go ahead and try and unmute one more time. George, are you able to hit the unmute button? It should be in the lower left part of your screen. George, I apologize. We're not able to hear you. I'm going to move on to Dean Dutcher, and we'll try and come back to you again at some point here, George.
Okay, I think we've got, this is actually Cynthia Dutcher. We live right on the corner of 3rd and 11th, so we've got both Excel and all of about everything else you covered. My question is, we have a very large mature tree very close to that corner. You touched briefly on restoring property, but if you drove by our house, you'll see that we do have a pretty pristine property. So I'm a little curious about mature trees and how the restoring of property will take place.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're going to start looking at, I mean, this is the first blush at this living streets and sidewalk connectivity. Like I mentioned, what we're proposing on 3rd Street there is shrinking the street down to 24 feet and putting that sidewalk in with a boulevard. So that 3.5 foot is what we're going to be looking at, and we'll be going out in the field and kind of identifying what that looks like. We're going to try to save everything that we can. The last thing we want to do is come in and start cutting trees down. That doesn't do anybody any good. So we'll certainly look at that. If there's something we can do to avoid taking a tree down, we will. And then as far as restoration goes, we're proposing sod with this project. So everybody that gets their yard ripped up or something happens beyond the curb, it will get new sod. So we're gonna make the place look like it was before we got there.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry we couldn't get unmuted again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's helpful. It scares the bejeebers out of me when you say try not to cut down trees, but I assume we'll be very closely communicated if anything like that would have to happen.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, you'll likely see us out there with a tape measure, and we want to get as much information we can on what we need to do to kind of avoid some of these situations.
All right. Thank you. I'll be out with a tape measure tomorrow.
Okay. I would be too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to David in just a moment, but before that, George was unable to mute earlier, but they asked their question in the chat. That question, oh, it looks like that question just got moved off the screen. Give me one sec. That question is, what will the parking be on Oakwood by Silver Oaks Park? The screen will not unmute. Oh, yeah, no, I don't need to say that part out loud. They're wondering about the parking on Oakwood by Silver Oaks Park.
At this point, we're not proposing, that with, Oakwood being shrunk down to 24 feet. We're not proposing any parking restrictions at this time. We're gonna kind of see what happens and what the flow of traffic does and what residents, and visitors can kind of do in that area. Obviously, with a 24-foot wide street section, it's going to feel real tight when you start parking vehicles on it. You're reducing the street by a third by parking one car. If you're talking specifically at Silver Oaks Park, I'll kind of find that one here. They are looking, or what they're proposing is expanding their parking lot to take more visitors. So they're going to expand the parking lot to the north. It looks just to the naked eye like they would nearly double the size of that parking lot. So I mean, in combination with their improvements, and like I said, we're just gonna try to feel out what the parking looks like on these streets. As I mentioned, this is our first go with the Living Streets plan. So this is kind of our guinea pig to see what happens.
So George, I see that you said this is a big problem, and you asked how you can get unmuted because we have inaccurate information. Unfortunately, all we can do from our end is ask you to be unmuted. I will do that again in just a moment here for you. But we don't have any control over your Zoom client. So let me just try that one more time. There we go. We've requested you to unmute one more time. I apologize, George. We unfortunately still can't hear you. Dustin, would you mind moving back to the end slides where you can see that contact information?
Yep, I was just
George, you
gonna
can.
say, George, if feel free, my contact information there, either phone or email. Please reach out to me, and we can kind of discuss the specific situation in more detail, and kind of go from there.
All right, I do apologize for the technical difficulty on there, and hopefully you and Dustin get that worked out outside of this meeting. I'm gonna move up to David. Oh, I'm gonna mess this up. I'm so sorry, Cornoyer. I'm gonna ask you to unmute and you can speak your question.
Yeah, thanks. One of the reasons I raised my hand was so that you could see my neighbor Diane wanted to ask questions too. I'm at 63 Oakwood, and I got to tell you a couple things, and they're going to come across kind of probably nasty by Minnesota standards, but I think the letter I got in the mail on this was maybe the third piece of information I've gotten from the city on any issue in the 3+ years I've lived here. So not impressed with the communications from the city of New Brighton, just generally. So when you say that you're going to communicate with us on things, I'm already entering into that pretty skeptically. I just have to tell you, as a homeowner and a taxpayer here, I moved here after many years in St. Paul. Are you going to plan to answer the questions in the chat at some point, either on a website somewhere or otherwise?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get through kind of the raised hands now, and then we'll jump over and tackle the chat room.
Okay, well, you don't have
questions.
You may not get to them tonight, but one of the things I definitely want to see as a taxpayer is a detailed budget on this. I mean, when you're going to charge each of us, you know, $3,300 or whatever it is, $3,100, and claiming that it's 25%, I think we need to see the detailed numbers on that. And I think we also need to see the detail on the contractors involved. All of us experienced in the last year or so the old Highway 8 reconstruction, and I'm guessing that was not a new Brighton project, but it seemed to take forever, and it seemed to not really have a lot of logic. And I know that that can happen at times, but just based on that recent experience, it wasn't lovely. How long, I got two questions. Here's the first one. How long are our streets literally going to be dirt roads generally? What is that going to be like on pieces of Oakwood or elsewhere?
So that's a little bit difficult to ask or to answer. We're gonna phase this project in a means where they tear up as least that they can to complete certain portions of the work. Gravel is less of a concern to me once it's gravel. It is dusty, and we can have water it, but it is dry. So at this time, I can't necessarily answer that question. It could be, I would expect maybe a month and a half, to be honest, where it could be of gravel, before they get enough road surface and mileage done to come in and pave portions of the project.
Okay. Thanks for answering that. My last question is, who was speaking to Michael's question earlier about being skeptical about speed tables or other traffic calming measures? Was that Mr. Lind?
That was me. Yep.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm disappointed in that, because to me, it sounds like you've already written it off. I'm at 63 Oakwood. Across the street from me are 3 young children, probably age 4 to 8. And let me tell you, I cringe every time they're out in the front yard and I hear a car zooming down the street. I submitted an email through the city's standard website, I don't know, year before last, and it took 2 or 3 months for anybody to get back to me. It might have been you, with a similar skeptical answer about, oh, well, we looked at the traffic there on Oakwood a couple years ago and it was fine and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you, easily on Oakwood Drive, 1 of every 3 cars is going way over 25 miles per hour. So this isn't a matter of, of whatever you might have in your mind about the types of people that complain about this, but it's an issue here. And the fact that you're letting some plow guy tell you how to run your city is ridiculous. Those guys are as skilled or whatever of bringing up the plow. They can do this. I've heard the same things with circles in St. Paul. Oh, the plows can't do their job and whatever. They can work around this. And it's a serious problem on Oakwood Drive, speeding. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll touch on that a little bit. I wasn't speaking to all traffic calming measures, primarily just the speed bumps. That's something that we just aren't comfortable installing. The kind of what we're looking at with this Living Streets plan is exactly kind of the concerns from you that we want to address. So now with Oakwood being shrunk down by 6 feet, one of the most effective traffic calming measures is actually shrinking the street. People tend to drive what they perceive as comfortable with a big wide street, and you just naturally, it's like you can go faster by shrinking the street down. It's going to feel tighter. There's going to be traffic a lot closer to you coming the other direction. If there are cars parked on the street at that width, you may have to slow down and wait for a car to go by you to get around that car. So that's kind of the things we're looking at with this road reduction, is making roads safer and encouraging slower speeds.
We've got it's Engdahl in here. And I believe our last speaker was talking about Diane Sager. I don't see the hand up, but I will ask you to unmute after the current speaker.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Leisha Engdahl.
We can, thank you.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I live on 20th Avenue Southwest. Two questions. Where exactly is the water main replacement happening? Um, Went through that kind of quickly, so I was gonna write that down and didn't catch that.
Yep, so pretty much all the water main on 20th Avenue Southwest will get replaced. It's
Okay.
currently located on the easterly side of the street.
Yeah,
Yeah, and with us, that's one of the streets that's going to be shrunk a little bit, only by 3 feet, because it's not getting a sidewalk. But we may look to relocate that water main a little bit more to the west out into the street from its current location. But yeah, all of 20th Avenue Southwest will get new water main, and any resident will get a new water service from the main to their curb stop.
and how much warning will we get prior to that happening, since we'll be getting water out of a hose for a certain amount of time?
If you're on that email update list, I'll certainly include that in there. Prior to us kicking off the project, we'll send out a kind of a neighborly heads up, hey, this is gonna start happening. Setting up that temporary water system isn't lightning fast by any means. So you're gonna see that it takes a couple days to get everything set up. For us to transition you to that temporary water system. Either we can go in, or you can do it, but we have to close 2 meters that are, or 2 valves that are by your meter. Just to prevent water from coming back out into the street, since we're going in backwards, but. We'll be doing a lot of door knocking and door hangers, and just letting everyone know that it's coming, and like I said, you'll start to see some activity, prior to it actually taking place.
And then once it starts, how long about will it take?
That's a little hard to answer depending on how they phase it. Typically a water main installation crew, if they can remove and install 300 feet of water main a day, is a pretty good day. So they'll kind of work their way down the block, 200-300 feet a day at a time. They'll have to come back after they finish this section and put the services in. So it could be a month, and it could be maybe even a little bit longer.
Okay. And then my other question is, so last summer, we were kind of the staging area for Excel. So right across our street, we had a porta potty, we had trucks idling all day long, as they were replacing gas mains. And how do you, I mean, actually it was very annoying because it went on all summer long and our street didn't even get done. It was just the staging area. How do you plan to work with Excel so that they finish their part of things with the gas mains prior to you working on the street and doing the water mains?
That comes down to coordination. Like I mentioned, I've been in contact with them here throughout the winter and told them that this is coming. They do know that it's coming. They try to get their facilities upgraded, generally around the same time as the streets, just because then they don't have to worry about, causing damage to streets if they're driving their equipment on them, knowing that we're gonna be in there replacing them. So they're very aware. It's just gonna come down to coordination, and I've already told them the sooner the better, get out of there. We don't want to
Yeah.
be working all over each other, and it's even
Right.
more chaos for residents, so.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that if you're having an event like a graduation or something, you said you'd try to work with us. So that I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I believe Diane Sager had some questions as well. I've asked you to unmute. Go ahead and do that and speak up.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm with my neighbor. I'm at 77 Oakwood Drive. It's been going on. I grew up in this house. And instead of opening up 16th Avenue, which is double wide, that's supposed to be the through street. But they didn't connect it to Silver Lane. My dad went to numerous meetings. Open that up. Well, they use our street as a cut through to get to Silver Lake Road, and they're driving 40, sometimes more down this street. So yeah, it's a big concern for children. Only takes 1 second for somebody to die. Yep. I grew up at this house and it's been going on for years and nobody does anything about it. But pertaining to the sidewalk on the west side, what about our mailboxes?
Yep, so we've identified that already. It's just kind of the nature of the beast when you put in a sidewalk like that. All the mailboxes will essentially have to be removed and relocated. I'm picturing them going in between the sidewalk and the back of curb and that 5-foot boulevard. But they will have to be pulled out and then reinstalled.
Okay, who's doing the installation?
Typically the general contractor, that gets the project will have a subcontractor. We've worked with them in the past. That's really all they do, is coordinate large projects like this and work with notices and letting the post office know. But then they also pull them out, and then put them back in the ground post-project.
Good, because that was a really highly done. It was done really well. I worked with my neighbors and it was a great day. It's leveled, it's really solid, reinforced. Just want to make sure it's redone the same way it was done 2 summers ago.
Okay.
And I'm having sod installed in my backyard this spring. So it's probably it should really probably be contacting the landscaper to have this, it probably is only going to take a day or so. Maybe before XL Energy moves in with their replacing the gas lines.
Yeah, I mean, depending on when Excel gets there, they're in the same situation. We've told them that they can't be blocking anybody's driveway or anything coming and going. So if that becomes an issue, by all means, let us know. But like I said, if it happens when we're working in there, it's no different than anything else. We'll do our best to accommodate what you have going on.
Okay, and as far as the assessment costs, yeah, I'm having sticker shock. But in our world, it's been happening a lot with me lately. Do you give a discount for paying in full? Do they bill us? Do we get statements sent?
Yeah, so there's no discount for paying in full. By paying in full, you will avoid spreading it out over that 10 years, which does include what we're proposing is a 3% interest. So you wouldn't pay that. I will just kind of note that when we put together this preliminary estimate, there's contingencies built in there. The last thing that we want to do is present a number and then come back next September and it's more. Nobody wants to be in those shoes. So typically we're under this number. I'll just note that.
So we won't know the final amount until after this assessment hearing in September of this year.
Yep, September of 2025 next year.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm all for it. My dad, I can just hear my dad. He passed away last fall, and that street, 16th, that street's really super wide. They're supposed to be using that street, but because it wasn't completed, it wasn't connected to Silver Lane for, I don't know. I don't even remember when they connected it, but they're supposed to be using that street to go through.
I agree. I hear your frustration. I mean, that's predominantly the route we want them to go.
Heard this from my dad for years. It's like if they would only open that up. But they didn't, and then people don't know, but anyway, yeah, the speed. I don't know what we can do. And maybe it'll take someone getting seriously hurt or hit by a car, or I don't know, which is not the way to get things completed.
Oh,
But thank you.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm with my neighbor on XL Energy. We had no idea that whole stuff was happening. It's just basically no correspondence, no letters stating that, hey, we're coming in. I was asking the work crew questions and they couldn't answer. They really didn't know. And so that, yeah, I'm surprised we weren't even involved, knowing that that was going on. And I had new sod in my front yard and they're going to dig up my front yard. So it was like, wow. But anyway, I know progress. I'm just being kind of I'm not always an optimist. So, but anyway, thank you for your information and I'll be quiet now.
Hey, thank you for your comments.
I think Steve has been working on the chat. Is there anything? Any recurring questions on there, Steve?
A lot of questions about driveways, irrigation, speed tabling. I think what we already discussed, narrowing of the street. I think we've mostly covered. I'm responding to comments as they come in, and I think we're getting most things on the through the voice chat here.
I think Graham has his hand up there.
Yep, Graham, as you mute, go ahead.
Hi, folks. Full disclosure, I am a New Brighton City Council member, but also a resident that it will be affected by this project. My question, maybe I just missed it in the chat, but a couple questions about for those of us that may get a new sidewalk, whose kind of responsibility to keep that clear in if we have another winter again? Whose responsibility would that be?
Optimistic about snow. Thanks, Graham, for attending. You know, it's that sidewalk that's going to be installed will be just like any other sidewalk in the city and will be maintained by our public works crew, including snow removal. Are you still there, Graham?
Yes, that was the question I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything other you can't answer, Steve?
Just kind of panning through here. It doesn't look like anybody else has their hands up. And if there's any other questions, Steven here has been trying to answer them as we're moving along.
Hey, Dustin, the one question that I see that has not been asked yet, and I'm confident you have a wonderful answer for. Jody Gustafson asked, how are you going to ensure that emergency vehicles are able to get in during this time? We have an older neighborhood, and that is very important.
Yeah, so to answer that, we'll be in, you know, it gets a little hairy, but we're in constant communication with our friends at Public Safety. I myself am a firefighter on New Brighton. So I certainly know the area well, and I'm there every day. I'm gonna know what's happening. So I'll be communicating pertinent information to their command staff, whether it be police or fire, daily, so they know what to expect. I hope that answered your question.
And I do see Heather has a question here. Heather, I'll ask you to unmute in just a second.
Yeah, can you hear me now? This is Dan, Heather's husband.
Hi Dan, how you doing?
Pretty good. We're on 19th Avenue. I know that we have a clay tile service line for our sanitary service. And I know that I have some roots in the line, both in our yard, and there's a silver maple in the yard. So there's roots in the line, there's roots in our service in the right of way. would there be an opportunity for us to hire our own contractor and have that taken care of, and maybe have PVC put in? And I'm wondering what the coordination would be on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. You know, now would probably be actually the ideal time if you're looking at doing something like that. If you got roots in the right of way, maybe they extend out into the street, noting that we're gonna be tearing up the street, the curbs, portions of the boulevard. And the city's gonna be restoring it. You won't have to worry about those additional costs. So now would be a fantastic time. If you do go through with something, just let any one of the contacts know. And we'll jot it down, and we'll certainly coordinate our contractor around some of that work.
Okay, is which contact would be best to get in touch with?
You can, that would be me, I think. And then I'll pass it along to Steven here, but, this is Dustin. I'm trying to get back to the last slide here with our contacts. I'm the first one there under these questions.
Okay. The other question was, well, I suppose I could ask if there's gonna be grade changes and if that's gonna affect our apron.
Yes.
Okay.
The short answer is yes. When we look at shrinking the street, obviously now the curbs come in and with us transitioning to, I think Stephen touched on it a little bit, the barrier style curb. We'll go to a drop down, which is nice at your driveway. You won't have any bump going in there anymore. But that does affect grades a little bit. So we are planning, and we've been looking. Stephen here has had smoke coming out of his ears looking at driveway grades for the past couple weeks and trying to make things fit if we need to go up in your driveway, 5-10 feet to kind of soften a slope to tie everything back in. We're planning to do so.
Okay, I'll shoot an email to you
Okay,
guys.
great.
I used to be an engineering technician myself, so.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for having this meeting. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thanks for attending.
If there's anybody else that did have a question but was unable to raise their hand earlier in the meeting, if you could put something in the chat now, we'd be happy to get you unmuted and get your question asked. Dustin, I don't see any additional hands raised. Meredith did just have a question there in the chat, but I don't see anybody else looking to get on audio.
Yeah, I think, Nick, we got her handled from here. It's kind of simmered down as far as questions. So if you want to go, we'll just continue to hang out here for a few more minutes. Should any more hands go up? I see there's one more in the chat. I can handle that. From Meredith, the question, where will we find the slide deck on the New Brighton website? We're in the process. As I mentioned, this is the first kind of step to the project of creating a website for this project. These slides of this presentation will go on there. It's also recorded so you can hear us talking back and forth. And then we'll continuously update that with any pertinent information, feasibility and public hearing information.
We want to post it in the chat. I've had a couple comments on that. Or do you have a PDF of the presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Steven's question to me was if anybody wants copies of the presentation tonight via PDF or this, like I said, this is recorded. Either reach out to one of us. I'll be making PDFs of the presentation either tonight yet or tomorrow morning. And we'll have them up on a website for the project. You could, yeah, like I said, you could almost also email us, and I'll send them directly to you.
I'll say on a personal note, as far as that traffic calming, I mean, narrowing the roads really does make a huge difference. That's one of the biggest factors for getting people to slow down. And I think that's part of Living Streets plan. I think that really is going to be helpful throughout. I was driving through Woodbury and they just did the same thing today. Like I was driving through Woodbury and they had a sidewalk and narrow street and was driving so slow. I'm like, oh my gosh, these streets are narrow. It's like a city street. You want to answer those, Dustin? Or...
Yeah, we got one. I'll just read it out here. We are on 3rd Street Northwest. If you narrow the street, will it be on both sides? And Stephen kind of commented the north side sidewalk. And it'll be roughly 6 feet smaller. I'll go back slide here.
The south side is getting new curb, but it is going back in the same location. So all the driveways on the south side of 3rd Street Northwest will not change locations.
And that's correct. We're shrinking the north side of 3rd to make room essentially for that sidewalk. And the south side is where it's at. I'll give it another 30 seconds if there's any last minute questions via chat or voice.
Thank you for your help, Nick. Thanks everybody for coming.
Happy to serve.
All right, that I think we'll bring the meeting here to a close. Not seeing any more questions. If anything comes up, we're always here. By all means, give us a call or email, stop in. If you think about anything over the weekend or even tonight, just let us know and we're always happy to answer your questions. So thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.